we go. Creatives, community, kind folks out there. Ooh, those are all streams. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. This week is Game Design Week. Yeah, I thought I'd do something different. Of course, it'll be this topic is on the heels of talking about alignment or hit points or what's the best role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game, etc., etc. But rest assured, everything and anything that I am going to say this week is, of course, I don't know why I would have to say this, but I have to, is, of course, my particular opinion when it comes to game design. What I write and along with fellow other writers and publishers, as part of Critical Hit Publishing, we produced materials for Call of Cthulhu and 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons and some agnostic materials. So while I am not a so-called successful writer and publisher, I do have some experience dealing with this simply because I'm going through the same growing pains that so many other people are going through as well when it comes to game design. So I thought I would basically throw in my 2 cents into and of course as I speak, I'm always coming up with ideas, and the guys who hang around here before and after the show, they know that I like to go off on tangents and talk about that kind of thing too. So each day we are going to use a square peg and fit it into the round hole of our Monday through Friday live stream, but we'll get along with it. So I just want to reiterate that these things are my own opinion, and they are anecdotal, which means that they are through my own particular lens and experiences, and everyone. I haven't got my stuffed squirrel yet. I'm choosing which we get squirrely on this channel, and I thought I'd get a stuffed squirrel, and I'm deciding whether I should get one that's more stuffed jokey or more realistic. I like the realistic ones, but they're a little bit expensive. I don't know why they're so expensive. So anyway, the descriptor on this is Monster Monday. Usually Monster Monday we talk about adversaries and enemies and NPCs, monsters, creatures, that kind of thing. And today is tagged as, today's tagged as intros and adversaries. And this is something that I've noticed previously with other types of role-playing games, and that is this isn't new, but this is done in role-playing games, and I have to say it's probably one of the best functions of a role-playing game, and that is the introduction. So normally in role-playing games you have an introduction, and I'm going to say the things that I'm not talking about. One introduction is, what is a role-playing game? And it tells you, it describes to you very, very simply and shortly and sweetly, this role-playing game, you need pen and paper and strange polyhedral dice, and you sit around a table or you get online with your friends. That's not the introduction I'm talking about. There's also the prologue introduction of thanking all of your friends and family and contributors and Indiegogo and Kickstarter individuals and Patreon members and things. That's not the introduction I'm talking about. There also may be some fiction that draws you into the world of this role-playing game, and while it's useful, and I have no problem with a couple of multi-page, usually single page up to like 3 or 4 page intro fiction, that's also not the introduction I'm talking about. The introduction that I'm talking about is a yeah, Tesla, like, excuse me, this is not the introduction you're looking for. It's just not. Let them pass. This is not the introduction we're looking for. No, the introduction I'm talking about is I suppose someone could theoretically talk about it as an elevator pitch. The introduction, I mean, is when picking up a supplement or a new role-playing game or whatever have you, or a modification because of an open game license and someone has hacked a system, whether it's Fate or 5th edition or whatever game is out there. The introduction I'm talking about, or thinking of, that I appreciate in a game is it's usually bullet pointed, and it'll give you 3, 5, 10 laws of what the game is about. It usually will say things that this is not only an introduction to the setting of the game, but it's more meta information. These are the elements that you should expect when playing this game. As writers and creators of this game, we feel that these are yeah, Tesla, exactly, the high concept, the elevator pitch, you are going to have more fun if this game is played or used in this manner. Tesla brings up the high concept. The premise can be accurately summarized in one sentence. Yes, and usually they are summarized, like you said, in one sentence, usually like 3 to 10 bullet points. And then below that, meeples, what are the best words? If you say so there, Palora. The concept will be these one sentence high concepts will kind of galvanizing you as if you're running the game and your players to say, hey, listen, you know, they didn't design this game to be comedic. They designed this game to delve into more psychological issues. Okay, I get it now. Okay, so if we ignore the psychological portion of this and start to play this as a comedy, we are not going to have as much fun in this game. And I appreciate that when it comes to introductions. Lots of times introductions will tell you things in the world that are truisms that don't happen in reality. For example, I appreciate this in the Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood role-playing game, where Tales from the Loop takes place in the 80s and Things from the Flood takes place in the 90s, and you play adolescence in the game. And one of the truisms in that game, amongst many, are that, what does it say? Adults are ignorant and unhelpful, and they are essentially motivators for drama, and they cannot help you. It is your job to investigate the mysteries that are going on from the Tales from the Loop or Things from the Flood. And so when the PCs, we are role players, and role players are a logical lot, and we are creative, and we're intelligent. And if you're playing a 13-year-old, the first thing you're going to do is, hey, I have photographs of dead people. I'm going to show the adults and take it to the authorities. Game over. And the game specifically is like, yeah, no. It basically says to you, I get what you're trying to do, but the adults won't help you out in this world. This is not the game. This is not the game for you to do that. In the quote unquote real world, you can show photographs of dead people as a child, and the adults will take over and they'll tell you to go to your room, and maybe you'll get some psychological help, in school or whatever, and they'll call your extended family and send you somewhere else and whatever. That doesn't happen in this game. The adults may think that you're making it up. Maybe they are too busy to bother considering the information on your phone. Maybe they think that this is yet one of those dumb, ignorant, and pretty vile YouTube videos or something that you created or someone sent to you or whatnot. The thing is that you cannot do this. And so in many games, I love the introduction of the concepts you're going to to encounter some of the methods that will help you in this game, whether the game it suggests that you read the rules and throw out what you don't like, whether the game suggests that you use certain types of resources, maybe even the high concept of the game may even suggest that you use certain types of mood creating things like candles or music or something. Maybe the game, yeah, yeah. Pelora brings up the point, like the real world is so boring. This is why we don't have adventures. Yeah, and also this is a great way for someone who's trying to have game design to basically very quickly and very succinctly and very openly allow the person who picks up your game to understand what your game is about, right? Yep. Tales from the Loop. The okay, Boomer. The RPG. It sure is. I imagine that if they make a third game, it'll happen in the 2000s. Yeah. Very well done. The production of that game is very good. And oh, here's another thing that is a high concept of that specific game. As an adolescent, you can't die. They specifically tell you, and in the rules, yes, your child, you will not die in this game. Now, you could be overcome with so many obstacles that your character is basically ineffective. You are, quote unquote, metagaming dead to the game. Like you're grounded. You're in the hospital. Your grandparents picked you up and took you to the other side of the country or something or what have you. But in other words, no, your character's gone. But can you die? No. So they're basically saying that, listen, there won't be child death in this game. You can play a child, and if you think that's something that will trigger you because of a past trauma, or you are a parent and you prefer not to have that in this game. Now, there might be people who would pick up the game and their group doesn't care about child torture and death and sexual assault or something, but the creator specifically stayed up front. Hey, if you're looking for that, it's not going to be in this game. Or if you include it in this game, be assured that the rules and the setting do not support what you were trying to include. And so I wish more role-playing games and supplements and things like that would add that in there. Like, hey, this is a book about monsters or magic items or something of that nature. Be aware, including this in the game will, and then fill in the blanks, will add a greater level of gritty entertainment, will unbalance your game if all the players are not aware of these things. These are character options that haven't been play tested or balanced. Like if you say that up front, then you go, okay, I get it. All right, I get it. Even if you can even say things in an introduction like, while you can add firearms, they are not appropriate to this setting, or most people are illiterate, and in this game it is about survival and not about killing things. Maybe this game involves a lot of social interactions or lots of exploration or resource management and those kind of things. Tesla says talks about speed, like pop quiz hot shot. There's a bomb on a bus. Once the bomb goes 50 miles an hour, the bomb is armed. If it drops below 50, it blows up. What do you do? What do you do? Yeah. it's the rules of the game, right? It's the hell, you could even have rules, cinematic rules, like hey, when the action lulls, have someone break in a door and start shooting things. I don't remember the exact quote when it comes to movie making, but there is a quote about that where it comes to action. Like, listen, if you're writing a movie and you're directing the movie and you get to the point where there is a lull in the action and your spectators are getting a little bit bored or they've gotten the next clue, then you basically have people break in the front door and start shooting the place up, and to move the action forward. And you could have that as an introductory things, you know. Pelor says, I've seen a few optional rules particularly combat, which say about making a game more gritty or lethal, and those things could be set up front, right? Hey, there are this supplement or this game is designed for more cinematic, over-the-top action, but there are optional rules to make it more gritty or something. Or if to let someone know right up front, hey, this represents more of action movies where characters are expected to do over-the-top things. Much like, let's take like Eberron. Eberron talks about, this is a game that takes place after a war, and lots of the action is lots of the activities are noir based, and what is noir? Where it's like gritty investigation, or some aspects of noir are small successes in a dark world of lots of failures. It's the gritty detective who's down on his luck, who's just happy enough to keep a family safe in a dark and gritty world without necessarily vanquishing all of the evil in the region or something of that nature. Um, yeah, what do I do? Call Coach Steve. How many Coach movies are there? But again, just basically, for my money, I'm a very big proponent of letting people know up front what the intention of the game is, what design methods were used for the game, maybe even include a few, not all of them. You could put this in the Appendix N, but some of the examples of what you could absorb to get an idea of what this game is about, whether they are movies, graphic novels, television shows, comic books, lectures, novels, classroom things, whatever the case may be, whether elements are taken from pop culture, that kind of stuff. Pillar-ist says, I think there's one in the Numenera book about injury recovery. Not about optional rules to make the game more gritty or lethal. Yeah. Also, introductions are really great when it comes to differentiating or combining or explaining the use of narrative and mechanical bits and pieces, what we normally call fluff and crunch, right? Is a lot of narrative power given to the players? Is there a mechanic involved in controlling the narrative? Those kind of things. And I think adding that into an introduction and letting people know up front, much like an elevator pitch, it's like, listen, this is what the game is about. It's going to be this dark. It's going to be gritty. Player characters expected to die. We're playing with horror themes, and those who are not used to or are sensitive to dark imagery and extreme violence and things that elicit phobias are part of this game. Please be aware. That kind of thing. This game is for mature audiences. Is also a perfect thing as well. Or despite the game, like for a wording could be said that despite the historical aspect of this game, the gender and misogynistic and racial prejudices of this game are tuned down to allow any and all players to experience this game in an equal manner. Saying that up front, is another thing as well. Yep. Joseph says, was just checking out Modern Age, capital AGE, role-playing game. It says they have 3 options for gritty, pulp, and cinematic, but not sure how good the mechanics work. And also in the introduction stating when it comes to like gritty, pulp, cinematic, realistic, or what have you, stating up front the game's base introduction. For example, they don't say this in Dungeons and Dragons, but Dungeons and Dragons is extremely cinematic. It leans on the cinematic action that pulp over and above we can shrug off any and all harm kind of thing, but they don't say that up front. And so when someone is thinking of a very gritty, and in their mind they have this image of a very gritty and realistic setting, and then they go to play Dungeons and Dragons, there might be some incongruity in terms of expectations. And so letting people know up front, hey, expect to do these things. You go, oh, okay, all right, I get it. All right, I get to, um, overcome the great horrors in the world and take my longsword and chop down, 80-foot giants in one swoop and stuff. Yeah, I get it. Okay, let's play. As opposed to going, this doesn't make sense and this is unrealistic. Yeah, like Tesla Ranger says, combat in GURPS is already pretty deadly. Want to up the grittiness? Add the bleeding rules. Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, those of us that know GURPS, there are plenty of books that turn up the cinematic portion of it, but it really modifies the rules to get there, and especially amongst the superheroic aspects of GURPS. GURPS is extremely deadly. It's very gritty and deadly. I don't know why it needs like an extra ounce of grittiness for like bleeding rules and decapitation rules and all that kind of stuff, but to each their own, and why not go for it. Joseph says, I don't like the tree chopping aspects of D20 systems, which includes Pathfinder. You're down to 1 HP, but your hits and damage are the same as if you woke up. But I believe that's because they have not introduced the idea that built into the base setting of the game, that your characters and the things in the world are cinematic. Even when you're down to your last, you fight with the strength that you had when you started, right? We see this plenty of times in action movies where the hero is shot, stabbed, beaten, tortured, and then all of a sudden, they're unhandcuffed or they slip out of the ropes and they start fighting with their broken arm and running on their busted leg and having been stabbed, a few times, and they keep on going. Beating people up along the way. As a matter of fact, I remember watching the show 24, and Jack Bauer literally was tortured to death till he had a heart attack. Now, mind you, the show 24 happens in 24 hours. In like episode like 4 or 5 or something, he has a heart attack, overcomes it. Next episode, I'm just gonna punch people in the throat and act like it never happened, and do they take a little pause to show you that this person is exhausted and hurt? Sure, they take a pause, but whatever. It's all narrative kind of concepts, and the base level of D20 systems tend to do that, where when you're at 1 hit point, you are still as strong as you are. And again, when interacting with something like that, when you're used to attrition games, meaning that whenever you get hurt, you are less effective than you were if you were at full stamina and uninjured. That game doesn't do that. And explaining that up front, you will fight against all odds and still be the strongest. Enemies you try to defeat will lash out at you with their greatest and strongest attacks until that one blow that lands that takes them out. It was, if they explain that up front, then you go, okay, I get it, or you know what, this game isn't for me. Unfortunately, what happens is a lot of times without those things explained up front, we all play the various games and then we fall into our different camps, and our expectations vary based on our experience with the game. So those of us who've had a lot of experience go, yeah, that game's not for me. I'm not into whether it's fantasy or sci-fi or superheroes or spy games or horror, and go, it's not for me. And then others who are getting into it are going, wow, this game looks really good. I can do a dark, gritty Conan with my Dungeons and Dragons game. And you're sitting there shaking your head like, yeah, you might not want to do that because it's not going to turn out the way you think, Pillar says intros kind of roll into the pamphlet. Like, this game is, in rough terms, these are the themes. This is who you play. This is what you do. Exactly. That's exactly what I mean. It's the it's the doctor's office pamphlet intro to the game you're about to play. Um, it's the it's the take this medication and these are the side effects part of game introduction, right? Um, you know, hey, yes, this will cure you. This will cure your gaming experience of not using a swingy D20, but on the other hand, you're going to get people who are number hunting. Uh, that kind of stuff. Yeah, Joseph Keenan says the setting I'm working on is 1930s. Had a line to the effect of a dame with a Tommy gun kills you as dead as a man with a Tommy gun. Yeah, and you might want to even include, since it's 1930s, that there was lots and lots of social segregation, and I don't necessarily mean that racially. I mean that gender wise, social status wise, um, regionalities, what accent you had, and that also was based on where you were from. If you're going very deep into the history of it, and you might want to make a comment about that, like, hey, listen, these things exist in the world, but the player characters are the exceptions to the rule, which is a perfectly fine thing to say in any game, right? Hey, this game is dark and gritty, but the player characters are exceptions to the rule. There are, what is it, Hong Kong action theater and Feng Shui, which is based exclusively on the high action John Woo, wuxia, wire fu type of Hong Kong action. And it says in the game, like, listen, the world takes everything seriously. The world does not consider the player characters to be these wire fu people. The players are the exception to the rule. Um, you know, the gritty cops captain doesn't assume that the player character can slide across the rooftop of cars and drive cars off of bridges and while slow motion spinning it around and firing two guns and then doing a backflip and landing in a superhero squat when their car explodes in the background behind them or something. Like, it's like, no, the world's gritty, but the characters are not, and it's not about jokes and rolling their eyes and stuff. No, this is part of the game, and so they say that up front. You go, okay, I get that. You know, um, yeah, Plura's like, yeah, 100% with you on a 19 to hit, a low damage roll, and you're buggered. Yeah, that's a swinginess of D20 of the D20 system. We're going to talk about that in probably tomorrow. I believe tomorrow is dice and mechanics, and we'll talk about like the practicality of it, the emotional impact of what kind of dice we use, that kind of stuff. So yeah, um, Joseph's like, GURPS and Savage Worlds are my two go-to mechanics. Yeah. And he also says this is why I like Savage Worlds for cinematic stuff. Exactly. Some people claim that Savage Worlds is like the it's the melting pot of rules light enough for those who like rules light systems, cinematic enough for those who prefer a more pulpy action game, and crunchy enough to differentiate exactly what you want in your world. So it's given a lot of credit for people who love that kind of thing. Deadman says Eclipse Phase fixes the one hit point works at 100% issue. Wounds lower your effectiveness. Yeah, Eclipse Phase kind of had that, and there are a number of games that have the that do away with the attrition mechanic. It's not really a mechanic. It's the get hurt, less effective kind of thing. Now, some people hate that because, much like miniatures or wargaming, there's a death spiral attached to it, and so there is some negative connotation attached to a death spiral. Well, thank you for joining us, Omen. I know you got things going on in your own life, but always great to have you, and yeah, take you away from a little bit of that meeple source. Meeples, you guys are weird. Yeah, I'm with you, Jay. Keenan. Yeah, it says need to find more time to read Eclipse Phase in detail instead of skimming it. I've got to get more into second edition. And of course he brings up what I was going to bring up for this next half hour, session zero isn't important. Tell the lore and way of your world. Session zeros are extremely important, and there's a small but vocal community of people who are like against session zeros, and it's weird because I think those same people, if you didn't call it session zero, actually run session zeros, even though that's language is another thing. We're going to talk about that probably tomorrow about it's kind of rolled into the dice and mechanics, but language is extremely important when it comes to game design, and the use of one form of language over another can almost make or break someone's introduction. Dungeons and Dragons is built on very old bones, and it is has an old foundation to it, and lots of people, it rubs them, for those who have a high experience with other games and with Dungeons and Dragons in general, find the use of the words alignment, hit points, and armor class, and the double use of levels for measuring experience and levels for measuring spells, like that rubs them so much the wrong way, because they, you could change armor class into something like defense, evasion, resistance, parry, or something like that that might have a completely different connotation. Even the player attributes, by changing strength to muscle or physicality, changing dexterity to speed, balance, reflexes, or you know uh, whatever, juggling or something, changing intelligence to knowledge or experience or brilliance, changing charisma to influence or aura, or any number of other deception or something, gives you a different concept of what this game means and what the statistics are, or getting rid of those statistics in the first place. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dead Man is saying you can find all the first edition books in PDF format at Rob Boyle's WordPress site, and they are free. Gotta say that to you too. They gave the game away for free. As expensive as the books are, the rules are free, which is like, what? But I think it's so good, I think you should pay for it. Yeah. Omen says, yeah. At the end of the day, they're all the same stats, and you're allowed to break the rules that some stats don't have to exist. You can have a game that doesn't have a strength and dex mechanic if it is a political game, right? You could have a political game where all the stats are mental and social. So you might have you could have 7 stats that are like persuasion, deception, bribery, threats. What are some other socio resources, demagoguery. I don't know. Like, you could have a game where they're all just social stats, bureaucracy or something. And yeah, you have points, and if you lose your points, maybe the game, if you fail or something, you're assassinated. You don't have dexterity, you don't have speed, you don't have strength to measure something. There might not even be any physical attacks. Maybe the whole point of the game is to maneuver in and around your opponents or something of that nature. That kind of thing. And of course, if the game includes a lot of player versus player, you want to introduce that up front. You could even do the opposite and introduce this game does not support player versus player, and if that is your thing, you won't find that in this game. You can say up front what is the purpose of this game. Much Polora brought that up. Talking about the gaming pamphlet, like, what is this game in rough terms? What are the themes? Who do you play? What do you do? And that brings me into the intros and adversaries. Um, uh, Very generally, adversaries, like, what state up front? What things will the players come across? And what does the game expect the players to do to overcome their difficulties? Are they expected to talk their way out of things? Are they expected to hit things about the head and shoulders with a big giant stick? Um, yep, Omen says, like, I remember a superhero game where they made influence the currency in the game. That may be a thing. Are you is the point to become to gain influence so that the public does things for you and on your side? And are you expected to collect treasure? Are you expected to beat up but not kill your adversaries? Is it an expectation that this is a very pulpy superhero four-color game, and you punch out your bad guys and take them to jail for them to escape yet one more time? Um, Heck, even including, yes, the player characters will be narratively close to death, but they will shrug off death to then fight, recover and fight once more. State that up front. I wish Dungeons and Dragons in all of their editions would say that up front. Like, listen, sure, they're going to get close to death, but there are lots of things that will prevent that from happening. They are the heroes. They are the pulp action heroes of this setting. Things may uh, things may die around them. Things may get destroyed, but they rise once again out of the ashes like a phoenix to continue to fight. And to do that up front, I think is a great expectation. Hell, Call of Cthulhu. Guys, expect your character to die, and if you don't, you're probably going to go insane. Period. Everyone who plays the game knows this. I don't know if in the introductions they tell you this, but yes. Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Expect to play your character and have wickedly horrible things happen to them. Like, I don't know, lose a couple of fingers. You're probably going to get an eye gouged out. You're going to lose some teeth. You're probably going to get diseased and get a punctured lung, and your character's going to go through a death spiral and die. Uh, right up front, you know. Pelora says there's a neat bit of the Numenera book which talks about genres and how to use them: post-apocalypse, quasi-medieval fantasy, weird horror, etc. And that's what a session zero is, and it doesn't necessarily mean, especially when it comes to game design, that you need to stick to one specificity. Um, yeah, yeah, Traveler, you could die in character creation, which is a bizarreness in and of itself. Uh, that's one of the draws to a game like that, right? Hey, we're going to randomly roll your character, and guess what? You're going to be a cliff jumper. Cliff jumpers in when I played games when we were young are like characters so useless they might as well just jump off a cliff because you're not going to have any fun playing them. Um, well, randomized character creation and game design. Hey, this game has a lot of randomized things. Please indulge in the randomness, both from the player side and the game mastery side. Characters run around the corner. Okay, roll randomly for what they find, instead of having to do lots of prep. Or tell the opposite would be, this game requires a lot of preparation up front, and once the preparation is done, you're fine. But in the beginning, it might take a lot of preparation. Same thing I would suggest for all of the virtual tabletop things. Of course, one of the I guess you could call sponsor, I am in league with. We have a parity with Fantasy Grounds College, and saying, hey, they fully admit that at Fantasy Grounds College, they say if you want to learn Fantasy Grounds, it's a bit of a steep educational curve, and while you have to climb up a very steep hill, once you get to the top, you'll be all right. You'll plateau out, and you'll be fine. But we're here to help you learn, Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop, and having those things and saying those things up front, even if it's just a one, two, three line blurb. This game uses lots of random tables, and we think using the randomized tables challenges the players and the game master, but you don't need to use them. Just pick something off the table and keep going. Going as you will. Pelora's like, you're gonna be a cliff jumper? No, no. You were going to be a cliff jumper. Grab a new sheet. Cliff jumper is like, you're going to be a cliff jumper. I don't know what skill that would be. I suppose if you, what happens if you fail to jump off a cliff? That's a pretty bad character. Just like, I'm gonna jump on my head. Roll. Yeah, your stats are bad. You failed. Random character generation is awesome in a post-apocalypse setting with mutations. Yeah, yeah. Jumps cliff, fails. Oh man. But yes, absolutely. The twisting this twisting this more towards the adversary thing is like letting people know up front, like whether it's character creation, whether they are certain types of monsters or mechanical beings, like letting people know up front with your intro and your adversaries and things like these are the things you're going to fight in this world. You're going to fight zombies. You're going to come up against eldritch Cthulhuoid horrors. You're going to fight people who there's going to be a lot of backstab and intrigue, and be aware that there will be very few people you trust, but you must put yourself out there. I brought this up the other day when it comes to Blades in the Dark. Blades in the Dark says up front, hey, we have a mechanic that specifically forces your players to get out of their turtle shell, because some players will like to turtle up in role-playing games, that specifically forces them to go out into the world and encounter things and be subject to the dangers in a gangland world instead of turtling up and closing and shutting the doors and hiding in the closet. Wild cards? Seriously, Tesla? You're bringing up some cool stuff there. Tesla says, in wild cards, the titular virus has a 90% fatality rate. 9 out of 10 of the rest become jokers. The lucky 1% become aces. Yeah, for those who don't know, and there have been a George R.R. Martin, as well as many other writers, decided to make and this is long before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there was a literary universe of superheroes written by authors who did not normally write superheroes. And they took it upon themselves to make a world known as the Wild Card Universe. And each of them created characters in this world. And there was something called the Wild Card Virus, where 90% of the people, it had a 90% fatality rate. And the last 10%, 9 out of 10 became jokers or very mutated, and 1% became aces. Basically, you were very slightly, if not at all, physically mutated, but you got a superpower that you could use, whether it's telekinesis or lighting yourself on fire or growing really tall or passing through walls or something like that. And quite a number, and it was a very adult oriented universe in this wild card setting. Yep. What about Kings, Queens, and Jacks? 95% of all the books are named after card game themes, like Aces Wild, Four of a Kind. Like all the games are like the Aces High. That like there are so many different, Joker's Wild, that kind of thing. Yeah, and Dead Man, please, or Tesla, please put that in the Discord chat. Throw the wild cards wiki. It's probably just, yeah, Full House. Yep. Oh man, four of a kind, Aces Wild. Full flush, royal flush. Yep. Floor's like anyone can light themselves on fire. I suppose doing it twice is is the magic trick. Yeah, anyone can light themselves on fire once. Yeah, Joseph's like Gamma World and Mutant Crawl Classic, baby. Oh, some old Gamma World. Mm-mm-mm. The Erotica Rocket Pocket. I don't remember that one. Wild Cards fandom. Yeah, that has all the characters in it. But again, Wild Cards was explained when because George R.R. Martin while being a writer is also an editor, and explains, hey, listen, we're going to take the superhero genre, we're going to get a bunch of writers that I know, and they're all going to take their own characters and they're all going to exist in this one world, and they are going to write them from the point of view of a writer existing in a real world. That's it. And there's some pretty adult themes in it. There's some erotica in there. That man puts in the and Tesla puts in the like the Wildcards fandom link, the Wikipedia Wildcards link, the wildcardsonline.com, and he's like in a couple of dozen others. Yeah, during the late 80s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, it was a big thing. And um I suppose maybe someone could kind of pull on that thread uh, because of the success of the Wild Cards limited series on HBO. Maybe somebody might. I mean, because of the Watchmen series on HBO, maybe someone could pull on that. Plural's like, it's not rocket pockets, it's pocket rockets. Got them the wrong way around. It's when you have a pair of aces in your hand in Texas Hold'em. I didn't know that. Pocket rockets. I didn't know that. But again, like uh, when it comes to your game, understanding like what is expected of player characters, what will be the challenges they overcome, and how do they overcome those challenges. And even I would suggest even going so far as to suggesting like uh, are player characters expected to overcome adversaries by gaining additional resources? They have to go out and scavenge. It is the idea of the player characters gaining more experience so that they fight things on their own, just fighting tooth and nail with their hands and feet. Um, hey, what's going on? Oh man, yeah. Uh, Back to work this season, basically. I think you remember the Wild Cards universe there, Em. We had a lot of fun with that. Yep, and GURPS had the licensing for Wild Cards as well. At least that first generation of books. I think there were like 12 to 14 books up front before they kind of came back and did like a second gen, um, not flash forward, but they kind of moved forward in time a bit. I didn't know Green Ronin Press released that game as well. Yep, initially published in the late 1980s. Many of the books went out of print, but Wild Cards has since experienced a rebirth with a new trilogy starting with the Inside Straight, published in 2008. Yep, and the second published in January 2008. The second published in December 2008, called Busted Flush. Third book in this arc was released in 2009 under the name Suicide Kings. Ah, and republished, yep, for the Mutants and Mastermind game. I didn't realize it was republished for Mutants and Mastermind, but I do remember there was a reprint of the Wild Cards in like 2010. New covers, new books, that kind of thing. I wonder if they're on all on audio. I would like to listen to that. But anyway, so for me, intros and adversaries, I think when it comes to game design, is one of the things that I feel behooves a creator to do. Basically, let people know up front what they're going to get into. And I understand that sometimes by doing that, this is kind of a very weird, but uh, thing that happens in the role playing community. But when you're told of something up front, sometimes people get very offended by being told that they will or will not experience or achieve or get something up front, right? And it's weird because it's like telling someone, "Hey, here's a big slice of cake. By the way, I'm gonna let you know that this cake has like, thousands of calories and is probably going to put a bunch of inches on your waist." And then people complaining, "I can't believe this cake has so many calories in it," and you're going, "Yeah, but you don't have to buy it. The cake is a lie." Yeah. Oh man. Yep, Malika's like bringing up the characters from Wild Cards. Captain Trips, Yo Man, the Hawkeye parallel. Yep, cool books, characters, and concepts, and pretty adult stuff in there. Um, Packing up for work, we listen in the car. No problem, Joe. Please listen on in. Yeah, I mean, letting people know up front what they're going to get into, no matter. I love cake too. Yeah, I love cake, but much like the much maligned 250 American dollar plus black box created by Monty Cook. How many people hated that? I can't believe he's going to make a game that costs, more than $250 in one big black box. That's not right. That's stupid. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, Ferraris exist. You don't have to buy one. And just because it's out of your price range doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. Yeah. Cake. Now I'm hungry. Me too. As a matter of fact, when I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna have to wash it down with almond milk that I have beside me. But yeah, just state things up front. Um, Let people know, hey, listen, your character will die in this game, or this game requires a lot of knowledge up front, or this game has a lot of alien concepts that you may have to discover, or this game takes place in 1730s France, and there may be some language and concepts that you may be unfamiliar with that we will walk you through. Like, just stating up front, there with the difficulties, the things you won't get, the things you will get, and you don't have to do this in any negative connotation, right? You don't have to say, this game is better than now. Here, side note, don't, if you are a game designer, do not measure your loves by your hates. Do not measure your loves by your hates. And we in the fan community, happen to do that very often. That we like to measure our loves by our hates. Um, uh, Coburn Farms, please endorse this. We'll have a talk about your support of this channel. No, anyway, there is the idea of like people going, this is like fifth edition but better, or this game blows this other game out the water, or this doesn't have those stupid things that happen in this other game. Don't measure your loves by your hates. Um, always state what you can do, what you bring to the table. No matter how simple, no matter how much it's been done before. Maybe someone wants to listen to your voice and how you come across it. And so, yes, does your game have magic? And you go, no, this game is a low magic, very gritty setting. If you are in, you will not find wizards casting fireballs and flying through the air and having lightning strike from the sky in this game. This game is about, you know, gritty urban survival in a post-apocalyptic world where magic just maybe is coming back. You could, yeah, you could do that. Plur says, "Do not measure your loves by your hates." Not heard that phrase before. I don't believe. I think I made it up. No, I'm not being sarcastic. I made it up. I don't. My brain turns off when I hear people measure their loves by their hates. You know, there, and I don't mean that even in a tabletop. I mean that in society. You're gonna find I could very easily get 10 times as many subscribers if I started doing hate videos. Um, 10 ways D&D sucks, 5 ways that how you're playing the game is terrible, 6 ways alignment ruins the game, brought to you by, like, I could do that. As a matter of fact, I still have old videos from like 4 years ago that still get hits about worst player, worst DM kind of stuff, but I mean, that's not me. So, and I don't want that around me, but there's plenty of, if you hate Star Wars, you can easily find that. If you hate Star Trek, there's something out there. Yeah. Dead man. Yeah. Nuts and Squirrels, DB Days channel, summed up nicely. Yeah. Oh man. Plus says, okay, I thought it was a kill your darlings sort of thing. No, not necessarily. Kill your darlings is a is a publication kind of thing where, um, what is it? If you are a director, they often tell you in the editing bay that scissors are your best friend, because oftentimes there are things we want to put in our creations, and they may not fit into our creations for the benefit of the people consuming them. It's much like it's like being too wordy with something. Sometimes you need to keep it simple, stupid. You need to kiss it, where it's like, yeah, yeah. Malika says, "Good analogy, dude. I'm going to use it." Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely. Scissors are your best friend. When it comes to design, scissors are your best friend. If you can, I this was told to me by a literary teacher. While it is a religious comment, it is not necessarily a religious belief, but says that one of the best written sentences ever in literature was the simple sentence in the Bible called Jesus wept. It's two words. It describes exactly what's going on. You have your subject, you have your descriptor, you have everything you need in that sentence. You don't need much more. So, and I refer back to that from a creative writer that I had when I went to Lafayette College. No, no, no. It was a class I had at Temple, and and was just, yep, Jesus wept. Um, was basically says is an example to use when you're a writer. We tend to be overly wordy. We tend to love the things that we have, and we're afraid to cut them out. So yeah, that has no, that's a slightly different from the don't measure your loves by your hates. Um, it's the don't say I love, I don't know. Don't say I love Die Hard because I hate comedy movies, right? It's like, what one has nothing to do with the other. And even in life and in politics, you're going to find lots of people who hate others and have a very hard time explaining to you the things that they love. You know, say that to any hood wearing, um, you know, racist out there. They'll tell you all about the things they hate, and when you ask them about their loves, their love list is real short. So yeah. But anyway, guys, we've hit the hour mark. Got to head off to work. I appreciate you being here. Thanks for stopping by. Nice and early in the morning. Um, yeah, this is going to be a busy season for me. I'm going to let you know up front if they start bringing us in at a different time. So far, we start at 8 in the morning, but they might start bring us in at 7. Hell, we last year I think they even started bring us in at 6, and there was a huge chunk of time where I had to cancel the channel. But hopefully that won't be a problem. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for joining me. Again, your time is extremely valuable, and I really appreciate you spending your time with me. I hope you're able to leave after spending your time here with a little bit of change. Everyone, have a great one. I will see you tomorrow. All right, now.